Hi, my name is Mike Welch. Today we are going to be looking at recurring invoices and accounts receivable. In this video, we will talk about what a recurring invoice is in accounts receivable and walk through the process of creating a recurring invoice and then how to generate a recurring invoice. Let's first start with what a recurring invoice is and situations it may be used. Recurring invoices are issued at regular intervals for the same amount. Examples of recurring invoices include monthly rental fees, annual membership fees, or monthly retainers. Now that we have a better understanding of what a recurring invoice is, let's enter one into Microsoft Dynamics SL. We're going to walk through setting up a recurring invoice for a $15,000 monthly lease payment for 12 months. An accounts receivable under Financial, in the Accounts Receivable module, you can enter recurring invoices in the recurring invoice screen. This screen helps to define the information that the system uses to generate the actual invoice. The screen is similar to the invoice and memo screen except for a few fields. For the invoice memo number, you will need to assign a reference number to the recurring invoice. This reference number is a manually assigned ID and is only used when making changes to the master document. You can use up to 6 alphanumeric characters. In this case, we are going to use rent. For customer ID, we are going to use CT0132. The next doc date is where you will enter the next date the recurring invoice should be generated. This date is used in conjunction with the generation date specified at the time recurring invoices are generated in the Generate Recurring Invoice screen. This will be discussed further in this video. The cycle field, you will enter the length of time between generations of the recurring invoice. In this case, the invoice is for 1 year rent contract with 12 monthly payments, so the cycle is 1. If the rent payment would have been due quarterly, the cycle would have been 3. The next doc date is where you will enter the next date the recurring invoice should be generated. This date is used in conjunction with the generation date specified at the time recurring invoices are generated in the Generate Recurring Invoice screen. This will be discussed further in this video. For the cycle field, you will enter the length of time between generations of the recurring invoice. In this case, the invoice is for a 1 year rent contract with 12 monthly payments, so the cycle is 1. If the rent payment would have been due quarterly, the cycle would have been 3. For the number of cycles, you will enter the total number of times to generate the invoice. In this case, it would be 12, since it is 1 monthly payment for 12 months. The number of cycles field may be set to 99 if the invoice is to incur indefinitely. 99 periods result in the invoice being generated for approximately 8 years. At any time, the number of cycles field may be increased to prevent the recurring item from being deleted. We will put, for the amount, $15,000. Description, we will put monthly lease. Terms ID will be 05. We will use account 3030 in that sub-account, and amount 15,000. And then we will click Finish. We will put the amount of 15,000 in. Description, we'll put monthly lease. Terms ID will be 05. Project, we will use the CO123000. Account, we will use 3030. Task, we will use the all zeros. And amount will be 15,000. And then we will click Finish. Entering a recurring invoice in the recurring invoice screen does not update customer balances or produce an invoice. To produce an invoice, we will need to go to the Generate Recurring Invoice screen. The Generate Recurring Invoices screen uses the information that is typed in the Recurring Invoice screen to create a regular invoice and generate the transactions that record the sale and receivables in the General Ledger module. For the generation date, you can accept the current date or type a different date. The generation date is compared to the next doc date, and if the next doc date is equal to or prior to the generation date, the invoice is created. Then select a handling, which we'll use Release Now, and Display Invoices. Then you will select the recurring invoice you want to create and click Begin Processing. This will generate an invoice batch that can be viewed in the Invoice and Memo screen. Let's go take a look at how these appear in the Invoice and Memo screen. You will see that these appear the same as a normal invoice, so once generated, these recurring invoices function the same as any other invoice. These recurring batches, however, will not generate on their own, so you will have to generate them every period. Now let's go take a look at the original recurring invoice we entered in the recurring invoice screen. When we view this batch, you will see that the number of cyclists has changed from 12 to 11 since we generated one of the recurring invoices. You will also notice that the next doc date increments to the next document date based on the cycle field. In this case, the cycle was 1, so the next document date is 12/5/2013. If you wanted to view all the recurring invoices that are currently set up, you can use the Recurring Invoices report. This report displays the status of each recurring invoice, including the cycle and number of cycles and next generation date. This report does not reflect any data regarding the actual invoices that are generated as a result of the recurring item. This concludes the process of entering recurring invoices and accounts receivable. I hope this video was helpful.